So what is strategic management? Well, what I have been doing is that I have tried to present, or will present you here with the next lecture, slide, of course, which states here that the field of strategic management deals with the major intended and emergent initiatives. Now, we have to remember before we read it that there's not a common idea about what strategic management is. So this one is the one that most people, according to Lynch, kind of say, this actually makes quite a lot of sense, that when we talk about strategic management, then we deal with intended and emergent initiatives. Now, intended means that we have an intention to do something, and emergent here simply means that it's something that comes maybe out of the blue, who knows, but it is about dealing with what we intend to do and what we may not have seen coming. And who is it? Well, that will be the general managers, and they would have to deal with that on behalf of the owners. And for doing that, they would have to here involve the utilization of resources in order to make the performance of the firm so that that firm can perform in their environment. And we'll get back to these ideas. And specifically today, we will talk about what we call environments. Okay. So why is strategic management important? Well, simply because it deals with fundamental issues. And if you can see here, what I have been kind of circling with this red area, it's about survival, and it's also about creating value. So when we talk about strategic management, we talk about a company that needs to be able to survive. But it's not only a matter of survival, it's also a matter of adding value to what the company is doing. Because if the company do not really add any value to what it's doing, then there might not be any customers to buy the product. So therefore, strategic management is about making sure that we survive and that we add value. So talking about how to survive and how to add value involves basically 3 different steps. As you can see here, strategic analysis, and we have strategy development, and we have implementation. Now, I'll try to go through these very slowly and step by step. First of all, strategic analysis makes it possible for us to start developing strategies, and we'll get back to why in a moment. And then, of course, we can start implementing our strategy when we have chosen what route we would like to take. Now, let's try to look at analysis. When we use the word analysis in this context, it simply means that we are doing research on our own company. And we are also doing research about the environment that we are operating in. And doing this kind of analysis simply means that we take a closer look at our environment, we take a closer look at the resources, and we also evaluate our vision, mission, and objectives. Now, we'll get back to all of these, and especially today, the lecture will be about the environment, and next time it will be about resources. So we will simply take it step by step and dig into what does it mean to do an analysis of the environment? What does it mean to do an analysis of resources? And we'll certainly also take a closer look at the different tools that we use for that. Okay, so that was the analysis. When we have made the analysis, then we get results from that analysis. And I'll get a lot more into that in just a moment. But for now, based on the results that we have from our analysis, we can start to develop strategies. And that means that the development phase, that's the process where we are researching and identifying different options. And there are a lot of different options. And we also have different tools that we can use in order to identify different options. And I'll also dig into that in a little while. And then, of course, we'll also have to decide on the resources that we possess in the company and how we would like to allocate those. And that means, if we recap, we develop options and we make a selection, and we are trying to find the strategic route forward. Basically, how do we allocate our resources? Then, having decided on where we would like to go, then we have the implementation. That means that's the process where we would like to turn our strategies and plans into action in order to accomplish strategic objectives and goals. That's pretty simple, basically. It simply means that we have to here allocate resources. We have to make decisions about, especially down here, people, and how and who are we going to have people work. So it's pretty obvious that if we want to be the best known global player within a field, then the actions we take and the way we dedicate our resources needs to be in one way, and compared to if we just want to be known in Denmark. So quite different ways of making things happen. So that's the implementation process. So now we are getting down to something that has more to do with today, basically the environment. And that's why we start with strategic analysis. And a little info here is about Lynch, the book that we are using. His book is also divided into strategic analysis and then strategy development and implementation. And for now, today, we will start to look into the environment here. And in Lynch, we'll also find that the environment can be analyzed using different tools. And the tools are those that you can see right here. Now, before we dig into the environment and the specific tools, I would like to give an introduction to what strategic management is in itself. So therefore, this first hour will be around analysis, development, and implementation, and especially the connection between these. And therefore, for now, I'm just introducing what is it that we are using the analysis for of the environment in order to give you a perspective and an overview of the whole book of Lynch and also organizational behavior. Okay. Then that was today, environment, and next time, resources. That means next week we will talk about resources. And as you can see here, we have basic resources like tangible resources, intangible resources, knowledge, skills, and capabilities. And we will talk a lot more about those next week. Now, looking at the environment and try to imagine that, well, not imagine, because you are, all of you, you are also in an environment. Being a human also means that if you're together with other people, you are then in an environment with other people. And in that environment, you may find yourself being strong in some positions, and you might find yourself being weak in some positions. Now imagine you have your family. If you go to your family and are together with them, then you would have certain strong sides and certain weak sides compared to these guys. And if you change environment, if you go and have a get together with your friends, the things you possess, the resources you possess as a human being, that could be your knowledge, your skills, your capabilities. They might be this, or they are the same, but being together with other people may actually mean that the same resources you possess will give you different strengths and weaknesses. Another little example in order to understand the importance of opportunities and threats is that if we have a company and we have a very good sales representative who's working in Denmark, and that person is an excellent seller, and can sell basically anything that the company have. Now, then the company thinks, okay, that makes a lot of sense that we want to expand our company, and therefore we would like to go to the German market. Germany is just beneath Denmark, so it's just crossing the border. And who are we going to send to that market? And then they think, okay, let's send our best salesman. And they sent this best salesman to Germany. And that salesman have great knowledge, great skills, great capabilities, but is not capable of speaking German. So entering to the German market, and let's just here for a moment imagine that in Germany, you need to be able to speak German in order to talk to different people and different companies. So if we have this very skilled and capable employee in Denmark having a great success, if we send the same person to Germany, that same person have exactly the same skills and competences, but is lacking one important thing, namely the capability of speaking German. So the same competences that makes a success in Denmark may, and now we take that person and throw that person into a different context, means a different environment. And suddenly those same competences from down here is now a great weakness. So that is something that we need to remember, that the environment that we have here can change. So being in Denmark is one environment, being in Germany is another, being in the US is a third, etc. So that is why it makes it important for us to have a look at the environment, because when we look at the environment, we will be able to identify what we can see here as opportunities and threats. And I'll try to give some examples of this, how it works. Now, looking at the first tool, and these are, remember, tools, the different dots, these are the different tools we can use to understand our environment. So the market size, growth, and share. When we analyze the size, the growth, and our market share, then we find out how large it is. And when we have made that analysis, we can evaluate the results of that analysis. We can figure out if the market is quite big. Okay, then that might be an opportunity. Or we may find that the market is maybe quite big, but the growth, it's not really growing. So it might actually not be growing at all. So that might be a threat entering that kind of market. So that means evaluating here size, growth, and share. That is presenting us with opportunities and threats, but in this specific environment. So if we did the same analysis of size, growth, and share in a different market, then we might come up with a different conclusion, saying that, okay, here we might have these opportunities and these threats. Okay, I'll change the slide. And therefore, we are going to do that for every single area of the environment. That means we have these tools, for example, degree of turbulence. We have to make that analysis. And therefore, when we do that analysis, based on that analysis, we can conclude again, are there any opportunities or threats given the degree of turbulence? The same goes with the Pestel analysis. And here it says Pestel analysis. Pestel is basically just a checklist, but we'll get back to that one as well. But as you can see, when we do this analysis of the environment, we have to use every single tool to make an analysis. Over here, we analyze the specific factor, then we evaluate the result, and the result gives us opportunities or threats for that particular environment. Good. So that means we end with a list of opportunities and a list of threats. Now, resources. We have, as we said before, tangible resources, intangible resources, and capabilities. Now, what we do is that we have a company, and the company is the same no matter what environment it wants to operate in. So what we do is that we describe and analyze our resources. And based upon this analysis, we can figure out what we possess. So that's basically what we can. And then we try to compare our resources with our environment that we have up here, that I'm circling right now. That means we're basically comparing what we have with the opportunities and threats that we find here in our environment. And based on that comparison, we are capable of evaluating here whether the resources that we have, whether they are strong resources here or they are weak resources. And that's a very important point to remember, that in order to figure out whether our company's resources are strong or weak, we need to do an analysis of them. But the analysis means we take them apart, we describe them, we try to figure out how much money do we have, what kind of capabilities do we find with people, do we have brands, do we have patents, etc. And then we evaluate whether these resources is actually worthwhile anything up here in that particular environment. And that means our resources and the strength of our resources here depends on, going up here, the environment that we're operating in. Good. So, having done this external analysis, we end up with opportunities and threats. And when we analyze our resources, we end up with strengths and weaknesses in a specific environment. Good. So that is what we call strategic analysis. And sometimes we see it presented like this. We have OT up here, opportunities and threats, strengths and weaknesses, and we collect it in a SWOT. So a SWOT is a conclusion to our external and our internal analysis. Okay, I'll put it over here, just collecting it in these small boxes. Then, having done that, we can start looking into strategic development. And there are basically two ways we can develop business strategies. One way is what we call environment-based strategies. And that simply means we imagine that you can put on some glasses and you can look at your environment, and then you say, okay, based on this environment and the results of my analysis, what kind of strategies might make sense to follow in the future? And of course, another one is down here, that we can put on our resource glasses and look at our resources and say, okay, no matter what kind of resources we have or environment we're working in, what kind of resources can we build upon, and what kind of strategies can we build upon or create based on this? And in reality, we will make a mix of these two here, and we'll try to go through all of them. Now, the environment-based options are called generic strategies, market options, and expansion methods. And the resource-based options are called value chain, resource-based, and cost reduction. We will get back to this because we have another lecture that is only focusing on environment-based options and resource-based options. So remember, this is just to give you an overview. And then in that mix between developing strategies, making our analysis of the environment and the resources, we always have vision, mission, and objectives as some overall, not guideline, but it could be a guideline. It could also be evaluation of them at the same time, simply to have them present. Good. Then we have something called corporate-based options. That's when we deal with different strategic business units. And again, I have to say, we'll get back to it. But we, for now, just remember that we have strategies based upon the environment, strategies based on the resources, and strategies based on that we own different companies and we can choose how to deal with these companies. Okay, let's try to move on to strategy implementation. So when we have our strategies developed, then we choose. We cannot probably go through with all the different kinds of strategies, but we'll choose strategies. And that leads us to the implementation phase. Having chosen strategies, we need to set objectives. We need to figure out what tasks need to be done, and we need to communicate the strategies, both to our company, that means internally, but also to the marketplace. Then we have to allocate resources in order to make sure that we are spending our resources in the best possible way. And then we have to monitor and control the plan. So that is what strategy implementation is about. And I've also tried to make these small guys down here because when we implement strategies, it's all about people and it's all about communication, because we need to be able to communicate to these guys who's going to make our strategy work. If they do not understand, the strategy will not work at all. Okay, so a last couple of things before we have a break. We have three elements of the strategic decision. We have the context, that is the environment within which the strategy is operating. We have the content, that's the actions that we put into our strategy. And we have a process of the strategy, that's how we develop the strategy. Let's try to take a little closer look at the process here, because Lynch is talking about two main approaches. He's talking about here the prescriptive. That's where we have, again, you can see, recognize strategic analysis, development, and implementation. And notice these arrows here, that in the prescriptive approach, we kind of say we do the analysis, then based on the analysis, we develop strategy. That also indicates that if it takes 3 months to do the strategic analysis, then we, after 3 months, move on to do strategy development. And let's say that we work with that for 1 month or 2 months. Well, is it likely that the environment will change in the period of which we are doing strategic development? Yes, of course. But on a strategic approach, we do not really care. We do, of course, but in theory, this is how it works. So you do strategic analysis in January and February, you do strategy development in March, and you start implementing in April, May, June, for example. And as a contrast, we have the emergent approach, where you can see that the arrows goes both ways. So we do the analysis of our resources and the analysis of the environment, and we do also create strategy, but we also allow to go back on a constant basis, so we can have loops back into the analysis we have and do new analysis. So you can say, illustrate like this, that this is a circular process. Going like this, we go back and forth constantly if it makes sense. That also means that strategy implementation might actually take place at the same time as we are doing the analysis. Just hang on to this. And if we go up here, the prescriptive approach, This is the approach that Lynch is following in his book. When he is presenting the different tools to us, he has a basic strategic prescriptive approach. And then he's having small issues about talking about emergent approach. Okay. So we probably need both prescriptive and emergent processes. Also because some departments in our company may need to have a more emergent approach. That could be the development department. So it's not for sure that one company has only prescriptive or emergent, but it is important to remember that it is possible to have both and make an overall decision. Does it make sense to have a prescriptive approach here, or does it make sense to have an emergent approach? That's a good question to take from it.